Flers-Courcelette, France, September the 15th, 1916. Lieutenant Arthur Herbert Blowers is on fire. Not metaphorically. His tank, a Mark I female named Dolphin, has been hit by German artillery and is burning around him. The crew has exhausted every belt of machine gun ammunition they carried. The driver is trapped. Blowers goes back into the burning hull, pulls his driver free, takes a piece of shrapnel through the head that he will carry to his grave, and then leads what remains of his crew across no man's land toward the British lines. What he has in his hand for the crossing is a Webley Mark Six revolver. What he faces is every German soldier between the burning Dolphin and the British trench. Blowers later said of that crossing that he fired over 100 rounds and that none of the targets was more than about 10 yards away, so he didn't miss many. 100 rounds. 6 in the cylinder, reloaded again and again from his ammunition pouches, in the middle of the most dangerous ground on earth, against men who were trying to kill him at arm's reach. He earned the Military Cross. His Webley Mark Six, serial number unknown, is on display at the Bovington Tank Museum. A Victorian revolver, designed in the 1880s, had just done something no German pistol in the war would be asked to do. It had kept a man alive across 100 yards of hell, one shot at a time. The Webley revolver is one of the oldest service weapons in this series, and that is precisely the point. Philip Webley established his gun-making business on Weeman Street in Birmingham's gun quarter in the 1850s. His firm's first significant military success came in 1867 with the Webley Royal Irish Constabulary revolver, a solid-framed weapon chambered in .456 that became the standard sidearm of the constabulary that gave it its name. The British Army followed in 1887, adopting the Webley Mark I after competitive trials that included Smith & Wesson and several continental manufacturers. What the Army selected was a top-brake revolver, a weapon that opened at the frame when a thumb lever was pressed, pivoting the barrel and cylinder downward on a hinge, simultaneously ejecting all 6 cartridge cases via a star extractor. Fresh rounds were loaded, the action snapped shut until the latch clicked, and the weapon was ready to fire. The entire sequence took 3 to 5 seconds with loose ammunition. With a Prideaux speedloader, it took 2. The mechanism had been refined through 5 marks by 1915, when the Mark VI was adopted on May the 24th of that year. 3 changes defined the final version. A 6-inch barrel, replacing the shorter barrels of earlier marks, a squared-off grip that gave better control under rapid fire, and a removable blade front sight that armourers could swap to adjust elevation. The matte finish reduced glare in the trenches. The weapon weighed 2.5 pounds. It held 6 rounds of .455 Webley ammunition, and it was, by the honest assessment of every officer who carried it, exactly what Victorian engineering looked like when Victorian engineering was right. The cartridge is the starting point for understanding why the Webley outperformed every German pistol at the distances that actually mattered. The standard Mark II service round fired a 265-grain lead bullet at roughly 650 feet per second. Those numbers sound modest against the Luger's 124-grain bullet at 1,200 feet per second, or the Mauser Broomhandle's 85-grain bullet at 1,400 feet per second. In terms of muzzle energy, the German weapons win easily. But muzzle energy is a measure of what happens at the muzzle. Stopping power, the immediate incapacitation of a man who is trying to kill you at 10 yards, is a different question. The .455 bullet measured .455 inches in diameter, presenting 65% more frontal area than a 9mm projectile. It carried roughly 21% more momentum than the Luger's round, despite moving far slower. At trench engagement distances under 25 yards, that slow, heavy bullet transferred all of its energy into the target rather than passing through. The Thompson-Lagarde trials of 1904 at the Chicago stockyards, the most systematic test of handgun stopping power conducted before the Second World War, confirmed the principle. Animals struck by large-caliber low-velocity rounds went down within 3 shots. Those hit by small-bore, high-velocity rounds comparable to 9mm showed, according to the trial records, no instances of dropping by the 10th shot. The Webleys .455 cartridge was designed around exactly this principle. Not penetration, not accuracy at range. Immediate, decisive, unambiguous cessation of the threat at the distance you were going to meet it. 1 shot was the standard. Frequently, 1 shot was enough. The German sidearms the Webley competed against were, in every conventional measure, more modern. The Luger P08 fired 8 rounds from a detachable magazine with a toggle lock mechanism of extraordinary precision. On a clean range, in dry conditions, in the hands of a trained marksman, it was arguably the most accurate service pistol of the era. The toggle sat exposed on top of the weapon, open to mud, grit, and debris. Modern testing has documented the Luger failing to fully cycle in dirty conditions at rates that would have been unacceptable in a service weapon. In the trenches, where a pistol might sit in a waterlogged holster for weeks before being drawn in a life-or-death moment, that unreliability was not a footnote. It was a death sentence. The Walther P38, adopted in 1938, specifically because the Luger was too unreliable for general service, improved mechanical dependability, but still fired the same 9mm round. The Mauser broom handle offered 10 rounds and excellent penetration at range, exactly the wrong priorities for a trench pistol. The Webley had no magazine spring to weaken, no slide to jam on a grain of sand, no feed ramp to cause misfeeds. If a cartridge failed to fire, the shooter pulled the trigger again and the cylinder advanced. The mechanism worked in mud, in water, in sand, in the frozen conditions of the Western Front winter. The British Ordnance Board's assessment of the Mark Six was straightforward, very reliable and hardy, well suited to the mud and adverse conditions of trench warfare. This was not praise. It was a statement of minimum requirement, and the Webley met it without reservation. Now, before we get into the combat record, if you are following this, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps the channel grow. The Webley Mark Six was carried by officers, machine gun teams, tank crews, pilots, signalers, and trench raiders. Approximately 300,000 were produced during the First World War alone. Even that was not enough. The government purchased roughly 60,000 Colt new service revolvers and thousands of Smith & Wesson hand ejectors, all chambered in .455 to meet demand. The legend that attaches most persistently to the Webley Mark Six outside the trenches involves the death of Grigory Rasputin in Petrograd on December 29, 1916. Multiple historians have argued that the fatal shot was fired by a British intelligence officer named Oswald Rayner, using a personal .455 Webley, the wound pattern being consistent with a large-caliber non-jacketed bullet at contact distance. Keith Jeffrey, the official historian of the Secret Intelligence Service, was given unrestricted access to agency files and found no documentary evidence to support this. The story persists regardless, repeated in every account of Rasputin's death, because it refuses to die, which is fitting for both the man and the weapon. Whether Rayner fired the shot or not, the Webley was in his holster that night. That much is documented. The most famous single weapon in the Webleys' history sits not in Bovington, but at the Imperial War Museum North in Manchester. It is serial number 169710. It was carried through the Battle of the Somme by Second Lieutenant John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, signals officer for the 11th Battalion, Lancashire Fusiliers. Tolkien contracted trench fever in October 1916 and was evacuated to England. His family donated the revolver to the museum during the 1996 firearms amnesty. The weapon that the man who would write The Lord of the Rings carried through the most catastrophic battle in British military history is a Webley Mark Six, not a Luger, not a Colt. A Victorian revolver, built in Birmingham, designed in the age of gaslight and empire, carried into the industrial slaughter of the Somme by a 24-year-old Oxford graduate who had not yet written a word of fiction. That weapon is proof of what the Webley was to the men who carried it. Not a sidearm of last resort, not a ceremonial accessory. A tool they trusted in conditions that would have broken lesser instruments. The Webley was officially replaced by the Enfield No. 2 Mark I in 1932. The replacement cartridge, the .38/200, pushed a 200-grain bullet at 600 feet per second. Every veteran who had carried both understood the trade-off. The new weapon was lighter, easier to teach conscripts to shoot, and produced less recoil. It also delivered measurably less stopping power. The decision was driven by training economics rather than combat performance. The heavy recoil of the .455 took longer to teach than the army could afford in a mass mobilization scenario. .38 was good enough. .38 was not .455. Experienced soldiers who had used both knew the difference, and many privately retained their Webleys through the Second World War. Reports from North Africa, from the jungles of Burma, from the beaches of Normandy, and from the campaign in northwest Europe, all document officers carrying privately purchased or retained Webley Mark Sixes, alongside the official Enfield issue. The weapon that had been declared obsolete in 1932 continued to be drawn and fired in anger across 6 theatres in 1940 through 1945 by men who had made their own calculation about what they wanted in their holster when the distance closed to 10 yards. The calculation was the same one Arthur Blowers had made at Flair's Courcelette. At that range, you wanted a bullet that stopped. The Webley stopped. The last Mark VI sold from the Webley factory went to Nigeria in 1957. Colonial police forces across India, Hong Kong and Singapore carried it into the 1970s. A Victorian mechanism, refined to its final form in 1915, was still being issued to police officers patrolling post-colonial cities half a century later. Webley and Scott ceased firearms manufacture in 1979. The Birmingham factory closed in 2005. The company that Philip Webley founded on Weeman Street in the 1850s now manufactures carbon dioxide pellet replicas of the Mark VI in India, from the original blueprints. The blueprints of a revolver designed in the reign of Victoria are still being used to build firearms in the reign of Charles. That continuity is not sentiment. It is the most honest possible verdict on the engineering. The Webley Mark VI was not the most powerful handgun of its era. The M1911 hit harder. It was not the highest capacity. The Luger held more rounds. It was not the most modern design. It was a Victorian mechanism, perfected for the conditions of 2 world wars, carried by officers who had the choice of something more modern and chose not to take it. One shot was the standard. Frequently, one shot was enough. Germany built precision instruments for a clean range. Britain built a revolver for a flooded trench at midnight, with mud on every surface, and a man coming toward you at 10 yards. At 10 yards, the Webley was always the right answer.